Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, and joining me today is Father Michael Bombak, who is with St. Stephen Protomartyr Ukrainian Catholic Church in Calgary. Father, we have a big day coming up in the city here, the Day of Prayer for Ukraine on Friday. Can you talk a little bit about that, what's going to be happening that day, and why it's important?
Absolutely, Mario. So on Friday, we are going to be here at St. Stephen's. We're going to be serving a devotional service where we're asking Our Lady, Mary, the Most Holy Theotokos, to intercede for all those people suffering in Ukraine at this time, for an end to the hostilities, protection of the innocent, and to let peace prevail there. And so this is a devotional service. It's going to happen at 11 o'clock in the morning. And then we're going to ring our bells at noon because we are ringing our bells in solidarity with many other churches in Calgary. It was originally sort of envisioned as a Calgary event, but our Bishop David, who in the Eparchy of Edmonton, that's where his cathedral is, has made it a province-wide event. And so many other churches have joined our ranks in being in solidarity with this. We have the Roman Catholic churches here in Calgary. We have the Anglican diocese as well. There are a number of other Protestant churches that have come together and are also going to be praying at that time on that day in some fashion, and then ringing their bells at noon. Why is it important? Well, it's important because as Christians, prayer and fasting are our two primary weapons in the real war. The war in Ukraine is a real war, but an invasion, in fact. But we are, as Christians, we are always sort of engaged in a spiritual battle, and there is a great temptation at this time to hate our brothers and sisters in our hearts because of this tragedy, and so we have to resist that. We have to resist the temptations to become confused, to become disoriented because of the fear that this situation is causing. And we have to fight the temptation to sort of forget who our real enemy is, which is the evil one and his forces here in our own hearts. And so we have to pray, and we have to fast, and this is essential. So our prayers are efficacious for the people suffering in Ukraine at this time. That's why we're asking Our Lady to help them, to protect them with her protection. And they are also efficacious for our own spiritual warfare that we're engaged in.
Father, can you talk a little bit about the support that you've received, not only at St. Stephen, but also at Assumption, the other Ukrainian Catholic Church here in Calgary, but the support that you folks have seen for the Ukrainian people?
It's been truly overwhelming, Mario. It's been absolutely incredible. I received a phone call from a Russian Mennonite woman who said that she feels sick to her stomach about what's going on in Ukraine. How can she help? I received a letter from a United Church here in town. I received a phone call from another United Church here in town. So many of our own people, obviously Ukrainian Catholics, how can we help? And they've been galvanized. But a lot of people, who may not have even known sort of where Ukraine was on the map, before, really are pulling out, are pulling together in order to support. I received a phone call yesterday from a woman who had seen a refugee who is homeless now, and just offered her own couch, like her own couch in her house. She sort of feels powerless. Well, how can I help? What can I do? And there are avenues, in order to help with that. Here at the parish, as I mentioned, we sort of established a joint sort of procedure, a joint mission with Assumption, our sister church, our sister Ukrainian Catholic Church here in town. And we packed boxes, and you yourself, Mario, you saw, how many boxes we packed with humanitarian aid, and we shipped that already. So there's still some more that needs to be shipped. So a lot of preparation with that, with packing, with sorting, with organizing. And in addition to that, we also have been collecting money through Kanewa, Catholic Near East Welfare Association, papal charity.
Mhm.
And all of that money will be going to humanitarian aid in Ukraine. So people have been very generous, donating financially. They've been very generous in supporting with their time and their treasure and their talents in other ways. But really, the outpouring of love in this difficult situation has just been incredible. So one more thing, Mario, our sister church here in town. So we've got Assumption, but we also have another church in our church, and that is the Melkites, the St. Basil's Church.
Mhm.
And they are Syrians, and they also, were driven from their homes. That's why they're here. And so they had a prayer night for Ukraine, and they had a meeting with me afterwards, and it was just so heartwarming to be with them. And they, because they said, we've been through this, we know what you're going through, we know what's happening.
Yeah.
And so they hosted a falafel sale this Sunday for our community, for their community, and for people seeing our billboard and coming on off from the streets in order to be fed. And all of those proceeds are going to the Kanewa Fund. So really, really heartwarming at this time.
Sorry, for people who don't know, what is that fund?
Kanewa, Catholic Near East Welfare Association. It's a
Okay.
papal fund that was established. I'm not quite sure when it was established, but it does all sorts of charitable work all over the world. This fund, the reason why we chose to support this one in particular, because there are all sorts of ways to help, Mario,
Yeah.
all sorts of different funds established, all of that. The reason why we chose to support this one in particular is because it comes from our bishop, so it's an eparchial drive. All of the funds are being collected through our eparchy and then sent over. We have a very generous donor who is agreed to match donations up to $500,000. And so that is a real gift and a blessing. And instead of sort of dissipating our financial support over a wide spectrum of different things, we would put the effort into a single fund, the financial stuff at least, in order to do a bit more good with that one particular initiative. So that's kind of the rationale behind why the Kanewa Fund. The other thing is there's very little overhead in that fund. You can count on the fact that money is going to to do the good that it is supposed to do through that fund. So it's very
Oh,
trustworthy that way. Yeah.
super. Father, what goes through your mind when you watch the news and see the images of what's happening in Ukraine?
Well, I have to say a little prayer before I open the browser. I have to be very intentional about how it is that I read the news. It is very easy to be overwhelmed. It's a terrible injustice what's happening, Mario. It's absolutely atrocious. It needs to stop, and I don't know where the terminus of that is going to be with with the EU, with NATO countries, with the rest of it. But there's anger involved. There's a deep sadness, and there is history from I shared with you before that the reason why I was born in this country was because my Baba and Yula, my Ukrainian grandparents, were displaced people. They
Yeah.
were kicked out of their own homes. So history is reliving itself to a certain extent. This is not a brand new concept or a brand new sort of conflict. This has been going on for quite a while. The acute nature of it, the acute level of suffering is new, but so all of that's kind of relived, and all of that's relived, Mario, not just with me and what's going through my brain, but more acutely through the lives of our parishioners. I've got a number of
Hmm.
clergy friends, fellow brother priests. They've got family there. They're waiting to hear back. How are mom and dad doing? So
Mhm.
me in my sort of sheltered is the wrong term, but quite a bit more sheltered than some of my brother priests and parishioners. It's a very different thing than how are my relatives doing? How are my friends doing? It's a
Mm.
tragedy.
Yeah. So Father, you mentioned, about the news. I know a lot of people that just can't take it, right? And they just turn it off and don't even watch the news. Uh, what are your thoughts about that? Like, do you think it's important though that people watch the news and be totally aware of what is actually happening?
Yeah, there's a like virtue always lies in what we call the golden mean, right? It's always the middle way.
Yeah.
Go too far one way, you're going to fall off that teeter totter. You go too far the other way, the same thing happens. It's just another direction, right? News is beneficial as long as it remains news. We need to be informed. We need to know what's going on. That's important. But there is a time where news stops being news and it becomes either like an obsession or a form of, infotainment. Like I remember President Zelensky, he said in one of his speeches, like, I'm not in a movie, like that. He had to say that because we see these images, and we receive these images at such a quick rate, we can easily be overwhelmed. So I think it's important to be updated. I think you need to be aware of the news, but I think that it's very essential, if you're going to do that, to establish parameters. I don't turn the news on before I've said my morning prayers. I don't look at my browser. When I'm on my browser, I have a plugin that allows me to take the images out. So I don't see the images. I want to read the text. I want to know what's going on. I don't need to, so have those images there in order to accomplish that goal. So there needs to be, and I don't read it before bed. I don't read it last thing before I try to go to sleep, right? And that's been a bit of a learning curve, Mario, because at the beginning of this conflict, I was glued to the screen, and it gets in the way of the real good that you can do. You really can help those people by praying and fasting, and carrying on your duties that the Lord has given you in this present moment, at this time. So we always have what we call the duty of the moment. That doesn't go away. And I would say that if you're going to be reading the news, and that's important, establish those parameters. What works for you, and what's the rationale behind it.
Yeah. All right. Super. Thanks, Father, for joining us today.
Yeah, it was great to be here, Mario. God bless you and your work, and we'll chat soon.
You bet. That was Father Michael Bombak, who is at St. Stephen Protomartyr Ukrainian Catholic Church in Calgary. I'm Mario Toneguzzi. Thanks for joining us today.